Hello, everyone. I'm Steve from VALHARTV, and today I'll be reviewing The Rings of Power, episodes 1 and 2. So, we start out in episode 1 with Galadriel as a child, and she gets bullied, and her brother has to, he comes in and he helps make sure she doesn't get into a fight with one of the boys who was ruining her little ship she made. Her brother taught her how to make like an origami ship that opened up into a swan as it was floating down the river, and the little boy started throwing rocks at it, saying it wasn't gonna float, it was gonna sink, and after her brother takes her off, and they talk about the light, and stuff, and the darkness. Which I thought was actually really good. I did actually really like that part because he was like, the secret to the ship is the secret of the rock and the ship is the rock only sees the darkness below, so that's why it sinks. The ship, on the other hand, looks up to the sky and sees the lights, so it floats. And Galadriel asks him, like, how does she know what lights to follow? And he whispers something in her ear. So I thought that was really good. This show, from what I've read, is like over $400 million per episode because it's a $1 billion season. So the sets, of course, look good. The clothing wasn't really that bad. The armors were pretty decent. I don't think they were like realistic to like a medieval style, but I'm not really an expert. I thought they looked okay. You know what I mean? But then we get a prologue where it's like they alluded this was going to be a real epic prologue and everything, and one of the trees gets destroyed by fire and everything from Morgoth and Sauron. So they go to Middle Earth. The elves do go to war, and they go to Middle Earth, and that begins the Second Age. And this show takes place in the Second Age, but we don't get a time period. Like, we don't get a date for it, which is very interesting. I don't understand why they wouldn't just tell us, like, this is the date, this is the time it's set place. But the prologue goes through, and we don't see Morgoth, or I believe that's who it is. I'm pretty sure that's who it is. I watched this a couple days ago, so I've been debating on whether I wanted to do a review on this because I'm not, really an expert on like the Tolkien lore or anything. I would never say I was, but they go through and they end up learning words for death because a lot of elves and a lot of orcs were killed, in these battles, and we see Galadriel like stacking helmets up on this one battlefield, and then we cut to her as a commander, and she's leading a small band of elves. And we see the trailer. It's in the trailer. They're going up a ice cliff, like this cliff that has ice and stuff on it. They're going up it, and of course she's miles ahead because it's all guys. Her company is all made up of all just guys, so she's like miles ahead of them. And then as soon as she starts to speak, and stuff. But let me say that ice actually looked better in the show than it did in the trailer. Like, it still looked a little wonky, but it wasn't actually as bad as it looked in the trailer. So I was surprised about that. But like, once they get up to the very top, her one like one of the guys comes up and says to her, like, we need to turn back. This is crazy. We haven't found anything since we've been searching because, of course, it's her task to find out who Sauron is. And we do get to see a silhouette of him, which I thought was kind of cool looking. But there's also like a symbol in her brother's chest after he dies. That nobody knows what it is. And obviously, like from the, we've seen before, and like the Peter Jackson and show movies and stuff, it's the sign of Mordor and everything. And but these have absolutely nothing to do with the movies. Like, every person in this is completely different from the Peter Jackson versions of them. Uh, and, so Galadriel is like, no, we press on. This is bull because, and she's real rude and real mean about it. And so they keep moving on and they end up finding out that they're in an abandoned, keep or castle. And they find the symbol of Mordor there again, and a snow troll attacks. So after the snow troll attacks and stuff, she literally kills it within 2 seconds. Like, as soon as she comes out, she slides around, boom, 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 done. And I'm like, wow, really? I'm like, that's absolutely crazy. I'm like, she just took this out when the snow troll literally took out all the rest of her company in, one fell swoop. So what do the guys do, of course? They're like, if you want to go on, you're going to go on without us because we're tired and we want to go home. So they put their swords down, and she has no choice but to go back to High King. Let me find his name. Gilgalad, where they're stationed at, and man, I don't know who wrote Galadriel's character, but it's absolutely terrible. Like, the whole first 2 episodes, because they dropped 2 episodes for this, she is so unlikable and so unrelatable that it's hard to watch her. She demands stuff. Like, when her and Elrond meet, they're supposed to be like best friends or whatever, and she literally does not talk to him like that at all. He comes up, he's like, how's my friend doing? She's like, you're going to get me an audience with the High King, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, before that, but, let's hang out, let's talk, let's, catch up. And she's like, are you going to do it or not? And he's like, listen, after the celebration, after this stuff, if you still want the audience, we'll do it. But let's calm down, take a break, and just talk and catch up with each other. And she's like, whatever. And I'm just like, dude, what is going on here? I'm like, wow, absolutely terrible. The whole time she's so mad at everybody. She's like, and the worst part is that the High King and Elrond are basically telling her that she needs to put up her sword and she needs to go back to the west, to the Undying Lands of Valinor, and it's like, wow. And she's like, no, I'm supposed to die here with my brother as a warrior, and she's just so mad and so rude about stuff. And I was like, dang, I'm like, we gotta watch this for the whole entire season. She's just like outrageously terrible to people. It's like, what? And it's further emphasized in episode 2. But in episode 1, basically, like, these 2 episodes are setting up some of the lore that they can adapt and introducing us to characters. Like, we get the Brandyfoots, like Nori Brandyfoot, who basically a hobbit. These are the ancestors to the hobbits, and they're hobbits. I mean, Brandyfoot was a hobbit, name. So we've got that, so we get introduced to that. Characters. We get introduced to a new elf, Arondir. 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 I'm probably mispronouncing that. And he's he's on a border patrol that is overlooking this town that I don't believe was ever in any of the Lord of the Rings stuff. I think it's a brand new town for the show. And he falls in love with Bronwyn. She's a healer of the village and stuff. And that's a very awkward, romance, because he's an elf and he's like, I've said it, how I feel in everything but words, in one part. I think it's episode 2. And she's like, well, how do you, what? And I was just like, wow, dude, this is kind of like awkward, you know. I'm like, I get like people don't like elves because, you know, the uh, southern men were big supporters of Sauron and all that, so they have to watch over him to make sure they don't, you know, go back to him or whatever, or they don't try to uprise. But it's really weird for that, and she has a son named Theo. Now Theo, I you know, and I don't know who these two characters are at all. I don't know if they're brand new characters or if they're out of like the lore and stuff. But he's just a kid who ends up like stealing a sword that is from Mordor and stuff, and we get to see that again in episode 2. But you know, to keep going with episode 1, High King Gilgalad and Elrond end up telling, Elrond does. He basically tells Galadriel that she's going back to the West. She's going to be done with full honors instead of getting punished for disobeying the king. And so she ends up going. And then we go to episode 2 where her whole thing is on a raft in the middle of the ocean. And I was like, really? We've got to spend an entire episode here? So it goes back and forth with that, with Nori, Brandyfoot, and Arendir, who takes Bronwyn and goes to another village like a day away, and they find out that it's been destroyed. And there's a big giant hole in the ground, and they do point out that there's a hole in there. They're like, look, there's a hole here. And then he's like, I'm going to go down and see where it leads. And she's like, but you don't know where it leads. And he's like, that's why I have to go down it. And I was like, could have had a slightly better dialogue. I mean, it's a big giant hole. You didn't really have to point it out. You could have been like, hey, look at this. Need to check it out. But I mean, it still wasn't really that cringe. It wasn't really that bad, but it just was like, really, you're actually pointing out that there is a hole in the ground when we see it. So they go back and forth. She goes back and tries to tell the villagers that there's something coming that we don't know what it is, but it destroyed this village. And they're like, yeah, get out of here, woman, blah, blah, blah. You're in love with an elf, so we don't want you around. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the editing for this part was really bad. We see her son in their cottage. There's like scraping noises on the floor, and he thinks it's rats, so he busts a hole into the floor, and that's when an orc comes up, but we don't really get to see the orc until later on. It's always like out of a corner of the eye, you know, things like that, until they really like actually kill it, and then she brings its head back into the local tavern and is like, boom, we're leaving. First daylight. And everybody's like, oh, well, okay, I guess. I guess we got to listen to her now because she brought us proof like we asked for. And I was like, wow, man. I'm like, you couldn't have made that like any better so we could have actually seen the orc come out of the hole and seen what was on his head. It was like some kind of like cow skull or something like that. But I mean, again, the sets look good. It's just like some of the editing is really not that good, especially during the ocean sequence where we get to see this worm come out and destroy this raft with a bunch of people on it, and one of the guys on there like unties the rope so he can get away, and then he helps her out, and she's all like super suspicious of him after, you know, he saved her, and she's just kind of a jerk to him. And I was like, dude. And she's like demanding that he take her like to where the orcs destroyed his village because she's hunting orcs, and like demands that he tell her like everything about the army and stuff. And he's like, dude, I escaped. I don't, he's like, I'm not going back, so I don't know what to tell you. And Hallbrand is his name, I believe. And yeah, she's like literally demanding that he does it. And she's like, I am on a quest to hunt orcs down, and you will tell me. And I'm just like, dude, you can ask. You can be like, hey, could you like at least tell me where it is? What, like what happened? What's going on? I'll take it from here, But no. She's literally demanding because he's a man. And in Also, in the second episode, we get to meet Prince Durin, which I actually thought was kind of cool. This was a part I thought was really cool because Elrond gets assigned to work with Celebrimbor. He's basically one of the guys who helped forge the Rings of Power, and they're looking to forge make a forge that is so big and so powerful that they can forge whatever they want from it. And so they don't have enough people to work on this forge, so Elrond gets the idea to go to the dwarves. So they go to the dwarves, but they won't let Elrond in because, as we find out later on, Durin is mad at him. So he invokes the right of I can't remember what the word is they use for it, but it's basically the right of endurance, where whoever breaks the most rocks wins. And we see that Elrond is definitely like a politician because he looks at the rock after like one of his hammers breaks, and then he goes to do it, but then he's like, and then he drops the knee so he can talk to Durin, and that's where we meet his wife. We don't meet the kids yet. Well, they do. They're wearing like helmets and stuff, but then that's it. We never really see them again. And like the halls of the dwarves are really awesome looking. Like I actually really liked the CGI for this part. I liked the way the dwarves looked. I thought it was really cool looking. And we get to see that there's a sapling tree in Durin's home that is basically a like was taken from the actual their tree that gives off the light and stuff. I'm sorry, I don't know what the tree's called again. I can't remember what he called it. But he's really glad it's actually growing because nobody thought it would grow in the dark, you know, but he made it so it would. So I actually thought that was really kind of cool, you know. And we see that he ends up, Durin takes Elrond's proposal to his father, and then they are like, well, does he suspect anything? Things like that. And it's, they open up this box. Now, at first I was like, did they steal the Heart of the Mountain from the Lonely Mountain? I'm like, because that looks exactly like the glow from the movies, you know. And I was like, it can't be. I was like, I wonder if it's. I'm like, is it like mithril or is it? Well, I'm like, it's weird. So, in both episodes, they're setting up these mysteries to be solved. Like, who is Sauron? Where is he? They're also setting up like this mystery about what's in the mystery box, you know, and what is it exactly? And they've given us a whole bunch of characters like Halbrand. I started watching on one of the YouTubers I subscribe to, and he started talking about this, and I had to shut it off because he mentions kind of who he's supposed to be, and I didn't want to really hear it, so I don't know exactly who he is. But there's all these mysteries and stuff. Plus, we get to meet the stranger who fell from a meteor, and it's got to be Gandalf. I mean, it's a wizard. You can tell that, but I'm like, did wizards come from meteors? I'm like, I don't remember that. But again, when the Peter Jackson movies came, we were in the Third Age, so I'm not really sure exactly, you know, what's going on with that, but he doesn't speak. So, and then that's where basically Nori and the hobbits come in, is that she is trying to help him find out, like, about himself and what's going on, because she doesn't, you know, he doesn't really speak. He doesn't, or at least her language. And she's basically... I mean, it's almost like a version of Frodo or Bilbo. You know, she likes adventures and stuff. So I thought that was kind of interesting how they brought that in as well. Overall, both episodes, you know, I went in thinking it was going to be really bad, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and like some other people are saying. But I can't really give it past a 5. Just because it was kind of slow. There were some parts that I kind of like, especially in episode 2, where they were just on the raft the whole time. You know, I was like, man, can we just move on from here? I would rather see something else, you know. It just got to the point where it was just a little boring at certain points. So yeah, I wouldn't go past a 5 with this. I hope it gets better. I hope Galadriel gets better because she's absolutely terrible as a character. Elrond, not super bad, but he's not the Elrond we've seen from the Peter Jackson movies. It's night and day. So hopefully everything keeps building up and gets better. I did like the sets. I liked the CGI. I thought it looked good for the most part. There was a few things that were wonky, especially the troll sequence, or yeah, not the troll sequence, but the goblin sequence, and the orc. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. The orc sequence where it just kept cutting back and forth, and then we finally get to see it towards the end but then they don't show it. They don't really show it even getting killed. So it was kind of weird. But leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this episode. Let me know what lore they're adapting, because I don't believe it's from the Silmarillion from what I read. But if you guys like what I do, please hit the like button and subscribe. Take care for now, everyone.